Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Self-Leadership Lab, a place where we explore self-leadership so we can show up and lead others. Today, I'm very excited that I have Ryan Steuer on the show. Let me tell you a little bit about Ryan. Ryan is on a mission to transform classrooms from passive to purposeful. He's the founder of Magnify Learning, and he helps school leaders and teachers implement project-based learning, also known as PBL, that boosts engagements, deepens learning, and builds real-world readiness. Ryan isn't speaking from theory. He launched a PBL school within a school in a high-poverty, underperforming middle school and watched it come alive. Attendance up, discipline down, and students thriving. Before education, Ryan worked as an engineer for a Fortune 50 company and served as a missionary. So he brings a rare blend of systems thinking, servant leadership, and on-the-ground experience that resonates with both educators and innovators. He's the author of PBL Simplified and host of the PBL Simplified podcast, where he interviews school leaders and classroom practitioners making learning full meaning across the country. All right, Ryan. So welcome. That's a little bit about you. Anything else you want to go before we get into it?
Oh man, just excited to be here. I've got 5 kids, beautiful wife. We travel the country doing this work because it matters to us and it matters to, we think, the world as kids move from passive to empowered. So it's exciting work. Glad to be here to talk leadership.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. Before we get into leadership a little bit, you said you travel the country, and I know when we talked, you said you kind of travel the country. Are you mobile all the time, or do you have a home base? Or
Yeah, no, we do not have a home base anywhere.
wow.
Our mail goes to Texas, but other than that, we're in a fifth wheel, and we winter in Texas, and then we go travel around to national parks around the country after that.
Oh wow, that's super exciting. So yeah, I know that's a little off note for the whole leadership.
Yeah.
So, but I meant to ask you that, and I did it. So we'll just put it out there for the whole world. But that's super cool, and living that Spartan kind of lifestyle is kind of nice.
Yeah.
So tell us. Let's start a little bit, because I know I didn't know much about it until we talked earlier this or last week. But what is project-based learning, and then how does that relate to leadership?
Yeah, and maybe we'll start with what traditional learning has been for the last century.
Very good.
Right? It's the expert in the room is going to say things that we need to remember so we can put them down on a quiz, and there might be a cool activity, another quiz, a test, and then probably a project. And that's how we've done education, K-12, well into higher ed, right, for a century at least. And what we do is we take that project that's at the end, but we put it at the very beginning. And we launch with a real world problem to solve. So let's take genetics, for instance, right? If you're in a traditional classroom, you're going to tell me all about the Punnett square. You're going to quiz me to make sure I know it. And then you're going to have me apply it at the end. We're going to take it at the beginning and say, we're going to bring in somebody from the Hemophilia Society. They're going to come in and say, hey guys, every day a parent finds out there's a first day that their child has a genetic disease. And they immediately want to know 2 things. Number 1, is my child going to be okay? Number 2, they want to know everything there is to know about that disease. Hey, 8th graders, would you help create pamphlets, PSAs, slide decks to put into doctors' offices so these parents know more about this disease? And kids go, yeah, I'd do that. I want to help. And then we say, okay, let's get started. What do you need? Well, you said Punnett square. I don't even know what the Punnett square is. Okay, do you want me to teach you the Punnett square so that you can help these families? Well, I want to help the families. I don't know if I want to learn the Punnett square, but I do want to help these families. So yes, would you teach me the Punnett square? And that's the flip that we think is really important. Instead of passively receiving information, they're actively seeking out information so that they can solve a real world problem. And we do that K-12. I mean, you see kindergartners light up, seniors are doing amazing things. The whole spectrum, it changes the whole educational environment.
Yeah, and that's pretty much how we learn as adults too, right? I mean, if you want to learn electrical, for example, going to want to start back with currents or whatever. You want to solve your specific problem, and then of course you learn along the way as you watch YouTube or Google Chat and just ChatGPT, whatever. So yeah, that's very interesting. So walk me through a little bit, like how a kindergartner would do this differently than let's say a 12th grader, because there's such an age gap, maturity gap, knowledge gap, those kind of things between the two.
Certainly. So there's definitely a difference. So we have this thing we call voice and choice. How much voice does the learner get in how they're going to solve this problem, and how much choice do they get? So if it's a senior, especially if they've been in a PBL environment their entire career, they get a ton of voice and choice. What problem in the world do you want to solve? How do you want to solve it? If you come all the way back to kindergarten, They probably don't know what problems we need to solve yet, right? And they're still learning to read, right? So there's a whole portion there, right? That's a little bit different, but you still bring in the fire department because typically first responders is in the standard somewhere, or maybe the canine unit. Canine unit comes in, says, "Hey, this is what we do. This is my dog, and this is what the dog does out in the community. We're here to help." Uh, you know, but taking care of the dog is kind of a big deal. They need to be active. They need to eat the right foods. Do you think you guys would want to help raise money and funds and toys for the dog so it can be most active? And the kids will go, "Yeah, we do," right? And they get all excited. And then the teacher's there to kind of scaffold that environment. You're going to say, like, we are going to raise this, but we're going to make a poster. You're going to write, right, a sentence, right? In that case, it might be a sentence about this, right? So all of their learning is going to move towards this now real life goal of learning about first responders as the standards, but the real life goal is they're going to help out this canine unit. At the end of the day, at the end of this unit, the canine unit's going to come back. They're going to have raised a bunch of stuff, a bunch of, food and toys and that kind of, they're going to come back. The dog's going to play with some of this stuff and they're going to get to see an impact that their education made.
Yeah. Yeah. It gives them a why for what they're learning too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it gives them a purpose. I mean, I remember many, many years ago when I was in school, there was always somebody like, when are we going to use this? Right. And it could be math. It could be what you were talking about earlier, that squared thing that went way over my head. But at the end of the day, you can see that if you apply it to something, I can only imagine that gets the children more excited to both learn and then probably even learn more and apply that to every other area. Are you seeing growth in areas like that?
100%. And I'll give you some of the statistics, but I also want to point out that teachers get empowered by this and leaders get empowered by this. Because traditionally that question is, when am I ever going to use this? Traditionally, teachers have kind of, how dare they ask, when will we use this? You need this for high school. You need this for college. And so now you've given me a goal that's like 6 years out as a teenager. Like, there's no way that's going to motivate me. Right. So now the teachers can see the why that they're presenting to the kids and they get fired up. And we do see, we see schools that go from a D on their standardized test, like their state grade, if you will, to an A in just 2 years using project-based learning because the kids are engaged, the teachers are engaged, the community's engaged, like parents show up. If you've got anybody in your circle that's a teacher and say, well, how many parents show up for parent night? Yeah, it's 1 or 2%. It is very few. But we have a huge percentage, like 80% of parents showing up for these events because their kids are excited about it. There's like, hey, you've got to be there. Like, this is really important. Like the police department's going to be there and we're feeding this dog and we've got to go. And you see this new light in schools that literally brings life into a school system and test scores go up. I mean, partially just because people are engaged and they're trying for the first time. Right. And the second part is they're legitimately leaning in and learning. It's exciting.
Yeah. No, that it is. And I can understand it because, like you said, give them that purpose, give them that why, give them that meaning for what they're learning. Because I go back to the example of when are we going to use this? I specifically remember it in algebra because you basically use algebra a lot in real life, right? As a 47-year-old man, I'm not a mathematician. I don't do math as a job, but yet at the same time to figure out problems, all the time is basic algebra, right? Whereas like if that teacher could have like implemented some project-based learning to figure out some stats or some equations to help others or to promote a common good, it probably would have gone a long way. And I think that this is, so what are you seeing from like both the self-leadership of the children and then also the teachers, how this like ignites people to lead themselves to learn more and then give to others and help others?
Yeah, it's so important. And like, this is your mission, right? This self-leadership idea. And so I'll just give, like, my example was I went through high school. I got a 4.2 GPA. I was a 3-sport athlete. So I did the things I was supposed to do, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. Right. So like self-leadership wise, I looked like I was winning, but self-leadership wise, I had no idea. I did what I was supposed to do. And so then you get into college, and if you don't have self-leadership, that's actually a pretty dangerous place. Right? You've got so many options and so much freedom. So we're giving kids this inner compass of self-leadership and agency of like, I know why I'm doing these things. I'm asking questions because I legitimately need the answer to solve this problem. And they've got a system, right? Like a self-leadership system, if you will, of how to solve problems. So when they get in the real world and they look at the mortgage rate that they're about to sign on for, and they're like, well, wait a minute, like, how am I going to pay for that? How is that going to work? And they start to problem solve these things. Well, if I got rid of my car payment, then maybe I could take the mortgage if I wanted to. But they're at least thinking through these things instead of just doing what they've always been told or what others do. They're actually solving problems.
Yeah, it almost gives a comprehensive view, which is almost what you'd hope education was. But as you mentioned earlier, the traditional method is, hey, learn this material, take this test, learn these facts and figures. How much has this changed with like I guess the progression of like things like ChatGPT and just even basic internet over the years?
Well, it should change a lot, right? You've got two different ways to go with it, I guess, right? You can dig your heels in and say no cell phones, no internet unless I say you can, or we don't do GPT because it's just cheating. Or you can say, like, in the real world, people use GPT. I use GPT every single day to create content, to repurpose content for social media, for research, all these different things. And if you don't know how to use it, it really doesn't work that well, right? You end up in a dead end. So if we taught kids how to use it appropriately, instead of, I forgot to do my English paper, write me an English paper, but actually said, well, help me do this research, then it changes the game. They've got this new tool that frankly other people don't have. So they're going into an interview and they're saying, hey, I know how to appropriately use GPT. I can 10x the content that you're creating. Do you want to hire me? Of course, because the other candidates are like, hey, I can write, 1 or 2 blog posts a month, right? So they could do the 2x, but here I can send a student in that knows how to use this stuff appropriately and they can 10x it. Like, they're miles ahead.
Yeah. And I think it could augment the whole project-based learning, as I understand it, because a lot of times the educational, especially once you get into higher ed, post high school, whatever, most of that work is project-based. You write a thesis or you write a dissertation, whatever, as you keep advancing. And a lot of times the material that's written is you find a lot on medical research, and that makes sense because there's so much money flowing into that. But how does a principle in medical research apply to, let's just say, the mortgage problem that you talked about earlier? And those principles aren't clear, but then you got ChatGPT. If you instill the student or the learner with the knowledge to take all resources together for a common good, I think then that would augment learning across the board and education in general. My personal take.
Yeah. No, so good. Right. So some of, like, when you look for the roots of project-based learning, like, where did this come from, right? Like, one of the paths that you can choose is the medical field, right? So, doctors to be are given a patient that has X number of symptoms, and they need to diagnose those symptoms, start looking for possible solutions. You run through those possible solutions, you implement, and then you reflect. Just essentially the PBL process, right? So I think the same thing happens when our kids get out of even college, let's say. So they're out in the real world. They're looking at the symptoms of their life, right? Success or failure, wherever those may be. And they're starting to look through those. Like, why am I not happy right now? Well, because I've got this debt. Why do I have this debt? What are some things I can do? Like, I'm going to go look for resources. So they go and look at Dave Ramsey's stuff and they pull it and they start to debt snowball. But they can do that on their own instead of just being like, man, life sucks. It's like, this is a bummer, right? So they just have this. Again, I think it comes back to the self-leadership portion, the empowered portion of, if I have a problem, I'm not deflated by that problem. I know how to tackle it in some way. And I might try something that doesn't work, but I'm going to try something again because I've got this framework now that I can work through.
Yeah, speaking of failure, how does project-based learning, address failure? Because a classroom is all scores and tests and advancement and all this. How does it deal with that?
Yeah. So in my book, PBL Simplified, I've actually gotten every chapter a win, a fail, and a place to start. And we in some ways, we want to normalize that failure in school. So if you're on the cutting edge, if you're in what I would consider the best practice of education, when you're giving a test or an essay and I bomb that, you're giving me another chance to redo that. Right. So I'm going to get multiple attempts at that, because really you're looking to see, what do I know? Not what did I know on Thursday. Right. So you're just trying to grow my expertise. So there should be a place in K-12 education for kids to fail, because we want them to fail in probably the most structured environment and supportive environment they'll ever be in their entire lives.
Yeah.
Right. Hopefully, outside of their family, that should be the most supportive. But if you think about the most structure, it's really K-12. Best place to fail. You get out in your job, I don't really want you to fail there, right? Like, and we might need to define what fail means, but we really want you to have opportunity to fail in your K-12 environment so you can learn from that and grow from it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, in reality too, in the real world and jobs, there's failures all the time. I mean, you were an engineer before, right? I mean, not everything you engineered worked. Proof of concepts, either budget overruns.
We didn't expect it to work, right?
Right, right.
That was part of the process.
Right, right. But because maybe because of the traditional education, that's why all these companies promote like, hey, we're the best in this, that, and everything always works in this. But I mean, like I don't know. I mean, look at Thomas Edison. How many times did he try for it was 3,000 something, whatever. That's a lot of failure for one of the greatest inventions. But again, he had a project that he wanted, getting light, and he just started outsourcing it. And I think it can give encouragement because one of the biggest I guess blockers to leadership I find is self-doubt and fear and even failure in and of itself allows people, because the science has shown us that once the brain thinks that something is unsafe or you're not good at it, it's going to protect you from doing that. So I think nurturing these children is at a very young age, especially if they can get into a school that starts this at kindergarten all the way through. I mean, I can only imagine. So on that token, do you have a specific example of a student that you could share with us about a transformation that happened through this process?
Yeah, for sure. I'll give you, let's start with an elementary one and you can ask for a secondary one. That's fine. So Victor is in 4th grade and he greets me at the door of his school because we're having a little breakfast thing. And he starts to tell me, like, while we're walking, he literally shakes my hand, looks me in the eye as a 4th grader. And then as he's taking me to the library, he's telling me about this PBL unit that he did where they redid Veterans Day. He said, the older kids and some of the other kids were not being respectful during Veterans Day, and that's not acceptable to me. So we had to change it. So he tells me how they changed it. And right. So he gets me there. He says, all right, thank you, Ryan. Thanks for coming. And I'm talking to his teachers. I said, man, Victor's project sounded great. So yeah, Victor just came to the country 2 years ago and he didn't speak English. I'm like, what? Because he just spoke very articulately and cared about Veterans Day to like a personal thing. I was like, this has to be fixed. And I was like, did you fix it? He's like, we did. He's like, nobody was laughing when the speaker was going. Everything was quiet. Like everybody was respectful. And he took pride in that. Like you could see this kid that, you think could be certainly an at-risk kid, right? Came to the country, didn't speak the language. And here he's thrown into an elementary that, it's a traditional elementary school, right? So it wasn't like it was a specific one for kids that needed to learn English or those types of things. And now he's speaking English. He'll shake my hand and look me in the eye. Like, got 18-year-olds that can't do that, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. And why Veterans Day? Why was that particularly important to him? Did he ever tell you, or did you ever find out?
So that's a great question. And sometimes it's a hang up with some of the teachers we work with is like that the kids have to pick. Because again, voice and choice, how much voice do we give them in the work that they do? And some really cool stuff happens in like seniors because they can pick. But like 4th grade, they probably don't pick this real world problem that they're going after because kids don't know what they want to care about or what they're passionate about yet. So sometimes we interject that. So their teachers said, hey guys, this Veterans Day program, like kids are talking, it's disrespectful to the veterans. And this is why it's probably not a good idea. But he grabbed that and said, yeah, you're right. Like, I agree with you. Like, he didn't know it was a problem. He probably thought it was normal. But his teacher said, hey, here's this injustice. Like, can we help? Do you think we can fix it? And their class said yes.
Wow. So the projects are kind of, I'm sure they're limited just because of the budget, time, scope of the school. But at the same time, there are like options for these students. So they try to assign them something that they're just initially curious or excited about from the start. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, and the more I think about it, because I never knew anything about this until I had met you, but the more I think about it, it is so close to real life. It's almost, why did it take over centuries or multiple centuries to get to this point? How much is it being adopted into schools today? I mean, I'm not going to ask you for statistics, but I mean, what's your swag on that?
Yeah, I think we're 10% maybe. I'd like to say we're at 10% at this point. We want to get to 51%. By 2051. That's our vision. Like our stated vision is 51 by 51. The majority of schools doing project-based learning by 2051. There's a lot of reasons for slow adoption. Again, there's a lot of inertia towards traditional teaching. It's a change process, right? So it's from the leadership standpoint, it's a pretty difficult move, right? Some principals have 35 direct reports, right? Well, that's insane, right? If you look at like the business world, nobody has that, right? And they vary from somebody that maybe doesn't have that maybe has a high school education to like master's level teachers or PhD teachers that are all on their payroll, and they're trying to navigate change process through that. So it is a complicated process, and people need to, once they see the vision, then there's avenues to do it, of course.
How much of this project-based learning is being implemented in the universities now in the way that they're teaching students?
So they're starting to move, right? They're super resistant at first, I would say, with, of course, some innovators, as with anything. But now there's kind of this idea of that's out there of like, why should I be going to college? And then why should I be going to your college? So the student experience has become more important, I would say, in the last 5 years, especially where universities, even big universities, have noticed like, the dropout rate in university is insane, right? It's like 50% of kids leave college with no degree and no debt. And what we found, I think there's a moral imperative there personally, but it's also this idea that colleges, if you just look at the system, like they need kids to go from freshman year to sophomore year. So bringing in project-based learning almost instantly increases engagement.
Yeah.
Increases purpose. So
are the universities seeing this kind of as a threat? Because I can only imagine, and again, I'm speculating here, so if I'm wrong, tell me, it's fine, that this would lead people more to the trades. And I don't know if you're familiar with like Mike Rowe, what he's doing is Sweat Pledge. I think that's what he calls it. But you would think that that would draw people, because a lot of times education is forced down everyone's throat. Like in my generation, you had to go to school, obviously, high school, and then you got to go to college to get a job. Well, like you said, the dropout rate's so high, it leaves you with massive amount of debt that you're never going to be recovered. Even graduates now, it's staggering to see the amount of debt that they're coming out of school with to the salaries that they're going to get in their first 10 years of employment. It's just I don't think it's going to be able to. I think it's not sustainable over time. But anyways, getting back to the point of my question, I'm asking a leading question here. I guess let's break it down first. Does this lead more to the trades? Have you noticed any trends in that?
I think what it does, because I love the trades, I think what it does is it lets kids know what they actually want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it lets them experiment with some different things. They interact with community partners. They figure out what kind of work they want to do and what kind they don't want to do. So we love being in career and technical education programs. They've got a ton of real world problems. They still need some help with the project-based learning side to help organize some of those problems for the biggest effect. So we love working with them. And I would recommend kids go there. If there's any interest, it's a great place to go. Because we've got kids that are leaving high school with 6-figure jobs, right? And that's not a bad gig right out of high school,
No, that's awesome.
So what I would like to think we're doing, I think maybe colleges could be concerned about, I think they should be. What they should be excited about is that the kids are going to college or going there because they have a reason to. Like they've actually thought about, why do I need this degree and do I want it? And then there are certain kids that are not going to university. They're going to trades programs because that's where I want to go. Like that's where I think my interests are. And I think that best serves the way I learn.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, not the current scope of this podcast or whatever, but earlier I was focusing on the work that matters to us and how valuable that is, because like you in the engineering field, me chasing nothing that I wanted, what I just thought the world or what others wanted for me, just led to pure misery. And it'll be interesting to watch this over time, because this is fairly new, to watch it over time and see what that does for like rates of depression, anxiety, dissatisfaction, because it's very rare. People always say find a job that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Well, that's normally said by a billionaire or a multi-billionaire or whatever, because they do get to choose what they want to do. But the happiest people I've come across probably in the last year are the trade workers, because they're, they have a boss, but most of the time they're on site, doing wiring or welding or even mowing grass. So are y'all tracking stats like this for like long-term watching the students?
Really difficult, actually.
Yeah.
I'd love to have better data, but again, once they're in our system, pretty easy to track. We have a ton of data points. Once they leave that system, they go so many different directions. It's pretty difficult to track. So mostly anecdotal. We're working on maybe cohorting some kids, but I'll give you one example that I think is really interesting. It's one of my favorites. So in 8th grade in my personal classroom, we had a kid, he had literally the lowest score in the entire school. So 951 kids, he had the lowest score on some of these formative tests, we call them. So we give them every 6 weeks or so. And we know a good portion of that's because he's not trying, right? But we gave him project-based learning. And within project-based learning, we do these workshops based on what kids need. So he saw that we would actually answer his questions, and he saw that he would actually get the help that he needed, which wasn't always happening. So his scores jumped immediately, one, because he was trying, he was engaged, and then they started actually up because he was learning. So he graduates high school, doesn't want to go to college, doesn't want to go to a trade. He goes and works for FedEx. He's a package handler. But what I love about his story is he looked around and said, oh, if I get a forklift endorsement, then I've got better job security and I get a pay bump. So he did that. And then he said, well, actually, if I go and get a hazmat certification, like that's lock solid as far as job security, and I get another pay bump. So he's working hazmat, probably still is, at FedEx. He's married. He works the hours that he wants to work. He probably plays too many video games, but like he kind of got to the point where he wanted to go, and he's pretty happy about it.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I've heard so many and read so many things that the education system as we know it today was designed for factory workers to get people, used to going to a place for 8 hours a day, doing what they're told, and then coming back the next day, coming back, but the world has changed. I mean, the United States does very little manufacturing. I know we're trying to get back to that or whatever, but bringing this into a new way of thinking, it seems natural to me. But I also, as someone who's gone pretty far in the academic realm, I do understand like kind of the, it's staunch, right? Like I would go back to those scholarly journals or whatever that are written. They're written by academics for academia, and they don't really go any further. And I'm super excited about this, even though I don't have kids and I'm not an educator, but I'm so excited about this because I just see like the efforts that you're doing in this whole project-based learning as like it's refreshing for the future, because you're gonna create people with greater well-being, greater sense of happiness, greater purpose, and really when it comes down to it, if you have purpose and you have something bigger than yourself that you're learning for, I mean, I think you have less burnout. Are you noticing any of that? Or I mean, are the teachers or the students reporting less burnout or fatigue?
Yeah, I would say teachers and principals and administrators. Like at a central office level, very difficult work, right? Very purposeful work. So you want to see that engagement and you want to see the impacts. Like you want kids to have these light bulb moments that they wouldn't have otherwise. So when you start to see them, it's like, oh, that's why I'm working so hard. Great. It's like sometimes teachers are working crazy hard, burning the candle at both ends, and they're still not seeing the results, right? And
yeah,
that's when you start getting a burnout, I think.
Yeah. And again, that whole just enlighten. I mean, I can tell in your face when you're talking about these students and these specific examples of seeing what's happening. It's got to light you up. And I can only imagine what that does for a teacher and then the fellow classmates that go with them. So what got you into this work? I mean, we said earlier, hey, you were an engineer, Fortune 50 company. Like, what was your aha moment or the light bulb for you to get you into this?
Yeah, good question. So I liked the work doing engineering. I would say intellectually, it was challenging, and I appreciated that, right? Like, how are we going to make things more efficient is just a fun thing that I enjoy. But then you look big picture, and for me, it just didn't quite add up, right? So there's this multi-billion-dollar company, and I'm making them millions of dollars. I'm just playing this efficiency game that I enjoy. And then we had 2 days where we worked with United Way. So we got this after-school program, and we got to go work with kids. I was like, oh, like I like this. Like this is my jam, right? And I could tell that other people were kind of into it too, but I was like, this is what I really want to do, because kids were almost immediately like relating and like listening intently and had reason to change and wanted to change. So that was the spark. And then I just jumped, told my boss one day, like, hey, I'm going to go teach 8th grade middle school at the southwest side of Indianapolis at an urban school. And we jumped ship. So, cut your salary in half. The principal actually asked me after he'd already said yes. He said, "So I wasn't going to ask earlier, but like, what does this do to your salary?" I said, well, it cuts my salary in half, and I'm guessing that I'm not going to be a millionaire when I retire. Right? How does that work for you guys? Although teachers actually do a really good job, but it was super fulfilling. I got to start coaching. I coached, some cross country and track and basketball, and that was the work that I felt like I wanted to do. And I would say for me, I didn't know it at the time. I thought I would be a teacher forever. I thought I was going to retire a teacher, just like my mentor did. But then I just kept getting more and more. I could see that things needed to change. So we changed the environment in my classroom and some others. And then kind of Magnify Learning grew out of that because it's like, hey, we could have a bigger impact. Like, what if we were helping schools across the country do this work? We'd impact more kids. So then that drew me into Magnify Learning.
Wow. So basically you found the work that mattered to you, and then you tried it in your own classroom, saw results, and then the need just kept getting bigger and bigger, or you wanted to reach outreach. How many states would you say right now are doing project-based learning?
There's probably some in every state. You've got some states, like Tennessee is doing in all their CTE programs, you have to do project-based learning. Like it's kind of mandated by some dollars there that are connected to it, which is good and bad. So it's good that we're moving in that direction. It's tricky when it's a top-down mandate because then not everybody knows how to do it right? So, or most effective. I've got a right technically, but I think there's a right way to do it. But it gets a little bit tricky when it becomes like a top-down thing from the state. So,
yeah. And you're seeing this both in public and private institutions?
Yep.
Are you aware of any schools that are complete project-based learning for the whole curriculum?
Yeah, we've got some model schools that are for sure. There's some K-12 environments that are just phenomenal. We've got a charter school down in Florida in Babcock Ranch, which is the only solar powered city in the country. So super innovative. That school has grown 796%.
Wow.
And they're doing PBL from day 1 to day 184 in all subject areas. So it's phenomenal. You get these leaders that are crushing it. They're innovative. They know how to lead themselves. They know how to lead a movement, and it's really what it is. Like you're getting the community involved, the school board, teachers, kids, everybody on board. And when they can do it and you can support them, it's really special.
Yeah, I mean, earlier you said that these students get to deal with community leaders and business owners, or even public servants or whatever throughout. So then it gives you a greater purpose. There's the adage, I know in yoga they teach it, like if you want to change the world, start with yourself, then your neighbors, then your community, then the world, kind of thing, like go outward. And that sounds exactly what this kind of thing sets up for, is because not only are they learning and they're bettering themselves, but they're also seeing how that knowledge can then impact their fellow citizens and neighbors and all that. So this is really cool. And so I to me, this is super very interesting. But what would you want to tell like the listeners who this is the first time they're doing it? They want to get more information. Obviously, they can go to your website, which we'll put in the show notes. But what other resources or tips do you have for others who want to learn this? So, like the light bulb went off to them and said, "Hey, I want to get my child in this, or I want to help out with something like this."
Yeah, if you want to help out, get your child involved, whatispbl.com. So PBL is our acronym. So it's just whatispbl.com. So that URL takes you to a whole bunch of information that you can learn more about it, how to get involved. I think if it spurred something in, because I love your mission, Bobby, is part of this, like this self-leadership of, because I could see myself, if I was still an engineer, I'm pretty sure I would be miserable. Right. And again, I love the work. I know there are great engineers that love the work. I'm not against engineering, of course. But for me personally, it's not where I was supposed to be. And I felt like my K-12, K-20 education kind of set me up to be in this spot, and I was supposed to just be happy there. So I think if your listeners find themselves in that spot where it's like, man, I'm just not happy with what's going on. It's not anything they did wrong. Like, it's not like there's something wrong with you. It's just you were kind of brought up into a passive system. You just need to break out of that, and then you're moving. So
yeah, it's so hard for people to be themselves anymore, right? With especially now with social media and regular media and all these things that are thrown in front of us. Because like maybe if you're truly happy doing let's say you're happy mowing grass. Cause I'll be honest with you. If I could make a living mowing grass, I would do it because that makes me super happy. Right. But,
Yeah.
but again, and I live in the DC area. If you went around and told people that, of course they're going to say, oh, what, poor Bobby, whatever. I don't care about all that. What the point of all this is, if you're listening, there is hope. And if you're not in school, start applying project-based learning to your own life. Like if there's something you really want to go after as a coach and a leadership kind of focus, you always tell people to take action. Well, the easiest way to take action is find something you truly love. And I'll give you an example of the reverse of that. My undergraduate degree was in tuba. So I went to conservatory to learn how to play the tuba. And it got to a point where I hated playing the tuba. And I say all this because this past weekend, there's this thing called Tuba Christmas, and they take tuba euphoniums. It's like 4-part harmony, and you just play Christmas carols. This was just, in a town square. And I hadn't played tuba pretty much at all for 20 years, certainly not in front of people in 20 years. But for the first time ever, like I enjoyed it because I didn't have the pressure of society or what the educational system, the competition of it. And my point to all this is that spurred something into me. So now it's like, I didn't do a great job. I mean, you could only imagine after not doing something for 20 years, if you said you played sports, let's say you didn't do that sport and then you went out and did it. Sure. It's like riding a bicycle to a degree, but then my lips just stopped failing. And my point to all this is now I'm excited about the next tuba Christmas. So that's my project, is to not lose my lips in the rehearsal. So I can't really play in the performance or whatever. And it's something that I didn't think I ever wanted to touch again because I was so burned out on it, and all this now is like re-engineering. So have you seen, I mean, again, I know you're dealing with high school kids and the long-term effects of this one there, but have you seen a kid kind of fall off and then come back or anything like that along the way?
Yeah, for sure. So I had a student named Skylar who just disengaged with school. So K3, what we find, like kindergarten through third grade, the kids love school, like pretty much wherever you're at. Like it makes a ton of sense. Then third grade, things get a little more difficult. Home life gets difficult. And, Skylar just figured out like, hey, I don't actually have to try and I can still get a couple free meals and hang out with my buddies. So he did that. He got project-based learning, and suddenly like school made sense to him again. Like he was the one that asked, like, why do we have to do this? It's like, well, because we're going to help people. Okay. Like I'll do that. So he gets it. And he starts taking pictures at the bus stop, putting them on his Instagram account, taking pictures of the sunset. And he gets this DM and it says, hey, can we use your sunset picture? It says at Time Magazine. And he replies, Ricky, is this you? Are you messing with me? And like, no, sir, this is Time Magazine. And so they use his photo. He's got 48,000 followers in just like 3 weeks. He's got the blue check mark. He's on the news. He was voted the top Instagram account in the state of Indiana for like 2 years in a row. So now this kid that grew up in generational poverty is out in LA. He's a freelance photographer. He's got sponsors from Monster Energy Drink, Nike, and a whole bunch of rappers. So he's hanging out with rappers and doing like these super like artsy kind of photos and stuff for them, like, and for their Instagram accounts. So he's absolutely crushing it. And in third grade and in eighth grade, really, his biggest ambition was to skate with his buddies. He just wanted to hang out. But then he saw this road of like something different. And he will point back to it. He'll say it was eighth grade year. We got project-based learning. He became a learner, and now he could learn anything. Like I didn't teach him about photography, but I did teach him how to solve problems. So he solved that problem. Like he figured it out and used the system. It's awesome,
Man, I can't tell you how excited I am about this because, like I said, I know there's hope out there. And a lot of people, when you lose hope or you lose your purpose, you lose your why, you never think you're going to get it back. And this is a testament to, what you can do, and just, it's changing your thinking, right? I've talked a lot about, growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Well, project-based learning is a growth mindset. It's like, what can I do? Another thing I like to say is, what are you going to do with this information? And you are setting up the next generation to decide what they're going to do with this information. Maybe it's just background information. Maybe it spurs them onto a new career or other additional learning or whatever. And it's really exciting. And I hope, that you reach your 51. You said 51 by when? What's the date?
by 2051. So 51 by 51.
20, wow, yeah, wow. You're going, you're writing yourself a long ticket to work at this. Yeah. That's pretty cool. I like that though. 51% by 51. So,
Yep.
well, let's. I hope like at least a few people that are listening to this today will come and help this movement. Let's get to this 51. I know I'm certainly going to plug in and see what I can do, because like I said, I just want hope, because the world just keeps, it seems stripped, and you walk around and people don't tell you what they believe in anymore. They tell you what someone else tells them to believe in anymore. Well, let's find that. Let's find that through the project. Let's find it for the work that matters to you. Let's lead ourselves so we can lead others. But anyways, I know we're cognizant of time. Is there any closing remarks, anything else you want anyone to know that I may have missed in the interview?
Oh man. I think that purpose is a big deal. Again, whether you're K-12, whether you've got kids or not, whether wherever you're at, like finding that purpose is such a big deal. When I think about kids that maybe I had in class that didn't make it to where they wanted to be, it's because they didn't have purpose. They weren't sure what they're going to do with their lives. And you can always pick that back up, right? It's not like I missed it. Now you missed your purpose. Your purpose is always there. It's worth seeking, and it's worth trying some things to see if you've got it.
Yeah, no, those are powerful words. And I know what I'm going to take away from this is every child I interact with. I'm a tall guy. You can't see it on the camera. So kids seem to be drawn to me. I don't know if it's the height thing or whatever, but help them find their purpose early. And, maybe even as a non-educator, say, hey, look, if they because kids love to tell you what they learn in school. Like you said, the K-3, they do love school. And I've noticed that because I've got these neighbors behind me. They used to come over when they came over to school. Hey, I learned this. I learned this. Well, now they're like 4th or 5th grade. You get less of that. Occasionally you get it or whatever. So maybe I can start asking them questions to spur them on, because that's, people always say stay curious. I think that was an Apple slogan at one point, but really, if we can stay curious and apply it to something, I began. I know I said purpose a million times in this podcast, but it really is everything.
Well, even the question, just to give you a question, is like, what problem do you want to solve?
Yeah.
Right? For those kids, and even for your listeners, like, what problem do you want to solve? What injustice is in the world that you're like, that's just not right. I've got to fix that. You don't have to fix it globally, but like locally, like what's one thing you could do to help fix that? Maybe it's food insecurity. Go work at the local food bank. Maybe it's, again, literacy. Like go get a tutoring program, tutor one time a week. It all makes a difference, and it fills you up too.
Wow. I don't think we can end on a better note than that. Go local, support your community, and make sure you're just filling your cup so you can give the overfill to everyone else. And Ryan, I am super honored to have you on today. I know this was a little strange as not an educator, but I believe in your cause and your mission. And like I said, we'll put everything in there so you all can reach out to Ryan and find out how to get involved or get your children involved, or whatever the case may be. I want to propose and I want to follow up with you, in a few, a year or so, and just see where this is going, because this isn't just a momentary thing. I think you're starting a movement, and it's beautiful, and I support you 100%. So thank you for your time today.
Yep. Thanks, Bobby. Glad to be connected to you and your audience.
Yeah. So for everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Until next time, I'm Bobby Shelton. Keep finding ways to lead yourself and showing up to help others in your world. Have a great week, everybody.